What is going on, everyone? I'm super thrilled to have you here with me as we are back for episode number 2 in the Percussion Homies project, and I'm just more than thrilled to be back with you all. If you don't know me, my name is Chris Rosas, and I am the host for this podcast. As we are back with episode number 2, I hope you all really enjoyed episode number 1 with Ethan Strickland. That was just a complete blast to put together with him. It was just a great time just to sit down with him and just chat about really his life and his musical journey, where he currently finds himself at, what he's working towards to, what the future holds for him, and what his interests are within music. I have nothing but great things to say about Ethan, and he was just such a great human to talk with, and I hope you all really enjoyed that episode. That being said, within the second episode of this project, I am just super stoked to have my good friend on here, Freddy Morales, who is just really the definition of a homie to me. In this episode, Freddy and I, we talked about all things percussion with life, but as well as, Texas, which is both of our homes. He's from El Paso, Texas. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. And if you both don't know, we both are passionate about Texas. Well, probably more so me than him. But in this episode, we talked about our homes and kind of about his background as a percussionist and kind of about, him as a person, about where he finds himself right now at UT as a master's student, and his interests about with his research, his playing, his performance opportunities thus far, and his role as a graduate TA for the drumline within the Pride of the Southland marching band here at Tennessee. And I think I heard one of my friends in the percussion studio here at Tennessee was talking about we should take a poll about how many times the word Texas was mentioned. So I think on this post here, we'll do a poll about how many times Texas is mentioned throughout the episode. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll do like a prize or something for the podcast. If not, maybe a featured person might come on. But definitely for sure, take a poll. If you don't know Freddy, feel free to follow him on his socials on Instagram. You can read all about him on his published page through my website at chrisrosaspercussion.com. You can click up on the very top right, click on the section where it says Percussion Homies Project, where you can find all the episodes of every featured guest artist on the podcast, and you can start to see a little bit of the faces of the next upcoming featured artists for the podcast. And there you can read all about Freddy, his bio, some of his performing videos that he has, and then also catch the episode. On that note, if you haven't followed the project thus far on Instagram, feel free to follow Perc Homies Project on Instagram, my page, Chris Rosas, where I will probably be sharing a little bit of behind the scenes of the project, of what I'm doing within the editing process, if not maybe just having conversations with the featured guest artists, to really all things about the project. And on my YouTube channel, where each episode will be dropped through my website. Lastly, I hope you all really enjoyed this episode, number 2 with Freddy. He pretty much, as I said, he embodies the term homies for me. He's just, been a super great friend for me the past 6 months, just getting to know him. And, through our both shared love of percussion in Texas. I hope you all really enjoyed this episode. And please feel free to reach out with any of your comments about the episodes, future episodes, what you're excited about. Please message me, guys. I'm an open book. Message Freddy and share all these videos as much as you want. I mean, I couldn't be more thrilled to just really share all these episodes with you all. That being said, please enjoy episode number 2 featuring Freddy Morales. For episode number 2, Freddy Morales. Yep, there it is. That's his intro. My gosh, that's funny. All right. So awesome. Well, everyone, thank you again for tuning in on this episode number 2 by Freddy Morales. He's the second guest artist that we have, which is going to be super awesome to hear him talk. Just really about who he is as a person, as a musician, percussionist, as a teacher, really all things percussion, and then a little bit outside of his life as well, and then how his life has changed being here at UT Knoxville with me as well. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Freddy.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. This is a pretty cool thing that you got going on.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for saying yes. And if for everyone who doesn't know, Freddy and I go to school together here at the University of Tennessee. This is his first year as a master's student, and I'm in my second year. So we just met, dude, like 6 months ago or something like that?
Yeah, when you put it in perspective, yeah, it's like pretty much one semester. At the start of this semester was like when we barely got to know each other. We've cross-referenced a couple times, but
yes,
we officially met like in August, which is kind of crazy to think about.
August 1st was like that hit when we started seeing each other almost every day. And ever since then,
Yep.
we've just used, we've seen each other every day, all day, 7 days a week. And that's just how we've gone pretty close. So super
And I'm
excited to
sick
have
of
you,
it.
man. Yeah, I know, right? Cool. All right. So I guess, why we have you here is to talk about some things about you, because you're cool, I guess, but overall, dude, your background, where you're from, is from the great state of Texas, also where I'm from. Can you just talk to us a little bit about, before we get into you as a person, but I guess about your background in percussion and some of like your influences a little bit, where you're from in Texas, and kind of the shift over with the move to Tennessee. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go kind of like all the way back. I started like in middle school band. My dad was a drum set player, self-taught, and I was, man, I want to be like him. And then I joined middle school band and I got a bell kit, and I was very confused for a little while. So I just stuck it through, and then I went to Socorro High School, and that's kind of where I got a little bit more serious. I was like, okay, this is kind of like, I want to do this beyond high school like that. I'm pretty serious about this stuff. So I started just like practicing a little bit more seriously. I was mainly just like a drumline guy, which I regret now, but I would just like practice a bunch of drumline stuff, and I really wanted to do drum corps. So I wasn't really looking too much into like universities and like higher education in terms of which schools to look at and which programs to look at. But luckily for me, you know, growing up in El Paso, Texas, UTEP was right there. It was like a 30-minute drive from my house. So I ended up going to UTEP. My first semester was fall of 2020. So like COVID was going on. And so I didn't really get a good feel for like how all of that, like how UTEP really was, because it was all online. But as the semester started to develop, Dr. Smith took me on his wing, and I kind of just flourished from there. Huge shout out to Dr. Smith. He's the reason why I'm out here doing all the things that I am. To all my high school directors too. So I owe them a big thanks. But yeah, so just in Texas, the culture is a little bit different. It's much more like, you got to win and you got to go big. And so with that in mind, like the schools I went to, they kind of weren't like big on that stuff. Like they wanted to win, but their values were shifted a little bit more differently. Yeah. So I think that's kind of where I cultivated my approach to playing and my approach to music. It's not really much about the outcome, but it's about the process and how you grow as an individual rather than like some sort of score you receive at the end of the day. But going back to UTEP, I feel like my experience there is slightly different from most people in other like university experiences, just because it's such a small school. Like we probably had, I don't know, probably like 12 people in the studio. And we were all commuters. Like we all lived in El Paso, so nobody like lived in the dorms, and we lived on campus. I ended up switching to live in the dorms because I wanted to practice more. But I was like one of the only people who ended up doing that. So the culture was slightly different, like there wasn't really any crazy traditions at UTEP. Like everybody at the end of the day would be like, all right, well, I'm going home. And that was it. And we would just drive home like at 6 p.m. And that was the end of the day. But yeah, that's pretty much my experience in terms of like my upbringing in music. And then sure enough, as my degree was coming to an end, I was like, man, I just want more school. That's what I want. So I was looking at a master's degree, and my friend, which obviously, Eli Garcia was,
shout out to Eli.
Shout out to Eli. Yeah. So he actually had the position that I have before, which is the teaching assistant for the Pride of the Southland and basically running the drum line. And so he heavily recommended this place. And so in addition to this place, University of Tennessee, I was also applying to a couple other schools like University of Oklahoma, Texas A&M Commerce, Texas Tech. But I ended up choosing this place. I think when I first came here, like the facilities, the program itself, and like the stuff that's at your fingertips is you really don't get that much opportunities elsewhere. And so that's kind of what drew me to UT. And then touching base a little bit about the culture, like the culture is slightly different. I don't know if you can talk about this, but like coming from Texas, it's a little bit different, right? I don't know. What would you have to say about that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, especially where I'm from, which is the central San Antonio area, or I guess the central Texas area. And then you're like super West Texas, that's a really big Hispanic culture, and just with that alone, it's like a huge culture shock, so, not as much as Hispanic and Mexican restaurants, foods, it's, you got your slim pickings, so we have our spot though. What did we talk about? What's
La
the place?
Michoacana.
Yes, exactly. Michoacana is like the best. My wife loves it, dude. So that's like our spot that we talked about, which we still haven't gone together yet, but we need
Yeah,
to
I
go. We
know.
keep missing each other.
I know,
uh,
dude.
but just with that alone, man, like with the culture and food, it's like, when you make a huge move like that, and me being here for over a year already, it's like I had to figure out like, what makes me feel closer to home, and not just music, but the food. So that was a huge part of it, and just interacting with people that are from the same area as you or the same state is very scarce. So like you and I, we're the only ones in the percussion studio that are from Texas. I mean, besides KZ, which
Yeah.
Casey's from San Antonio as well, which is crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, that's like one of the biggest things was when I came here.
Yeah. And
So
for me, it kind of like shifts your values. I don't know if that was a similar experience
mm,
with you, but
yeah,
like I don't mean this in a bad way, but like I really didn't spend much time with my family. I was always just like, man, I gotta practice, I gotta do this. Like I have my own projects, let me just like do my own thing. But now being away from like literally everybody, you're just like, oh man, like they play a huge part in my life, and like they're a big reason why I do this. So it kind of shifts it gives you a completely different perspective of like
exactly.
what all of this is about. Like now I have all the time, not really, but I have all the time to practice. Like nobody else
Yep.
is distracting me. But now it's like, man, like I want to go see my family. Like I just want to talk to them and say what's up. So that was like something that I really didn't expect. Like I knew I would miss like people back home, but it really shifted my core values of like why I'm doing all this stuff and like who's really important in my life. So I'm grateful for that, because I think if I would have stayed in El Paso, I still would have been like, oh, I'll just do my own thing. Like I'll just be on my own. But now it's like, okay, I'm a little bit more family oriented now, and have a
Yep.
bigger appreciation for people outside my family and my friends, like all the homies back in El Paso. I went back for Thanksgiving for like one day only. And so I was just with my
That's
parents, and I didn't see any of my homies. And so that was kind of a bummer, like I
yeah.
couldn't say what's up to them. Yeah, at least that's my personal experience. Like it just shifted my perspective on lots of life things.
Yeah, man, most definitely. And I think anyone who's like listening to this, and if they're considering getting a TA position at a school that's out of state, like this is something that almost every grad student goes through. It's one of those things where if you come by yourself, it's a huge shock just with the move and the financial, risk that you got to take just to move here. But, you're by yourself, like you're literally by yourself, and, you don't have family, you like to make a whole new set of friends, and you got to find your spots. You got to find ways and things to kind of, make yourself kind of get by and get through from week to week, especially when like, you have a TA shift, you have to be at your A game, which we'll get into that later on here in a bit. But like, the demand of a role, like kind of what we have is it's pretty high, and we got to meet it. So I was thankful to move over here with my wife, Maddie, as you know, Maddie. So it was difficult for me, but not too difficult in the sense of me not knowing anyone versus kind of with what you went through, kind of what I was last episode talking with Ethan Strickland. We talked about some of these same things too. He moved all the way up towards Michigan, and he's up there at Michigan State, which he's about to graduate. So nice job, Ethan. He's on almost done, but he went through similar things, and it's like we all do it. So it's just a part of life that no one really talks about, so I'm glad we're talking about it here.
Yeah, I
But
mean, you don't really think about it until it's just like it's a random Friday night, and you're just like in your bed by yourself, and you're like, oh man, well this is kind of weird. Like I'm usually out with my homies, but yeah, you just got to like ground yourself, especially like what you said about the TA. Like, I mean, you can't just show up with your job being sad. Like you just gotta do it. Can't bring that stuff to work.
no, you cannot. Definitely not. But yeah, man. So I'm sure this is all great stuff for people who are wanting to, consider getting a TA somewhere. It's part of the life that no one talks about. So thanks for sharing that, Freddie.
Good.
The other thing I want to talk about, dude, is like, what the heck are you doing here, like at UT right now? What interests do you have? And, kind of, I mean, obviously I know, but from what I've seen you do, which is pretty cool, I've seen you take on some of the projects, but I guess, for someone who doesn't know you and they don't know what you're about as far as with your music and your research and your interests, can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing since you've arrived here at UT?
Yeah. So that was kind of like the big question when I first got here. It's like, what do I want to do? You have a little bit more freedom in graduate school, but it's kind of just like open-ended. Like you can kind of do whatever you want, but that alone, opens up so many possibilities that you just really don't know what to do. So going back to UTEP, I'm grateful for Dr. Smith because he introduced me to all like the Afro-diasporic musics and genres. One of those being like Afro-Cuban specifically. And so like he would just, once you do a class, he'd be like, all right, guys, we're going to learn like typical Wawanko parts or like typical Dembe parts and stuff like that. And so that was always a pretty big interest, something that I was always interested in. So I kind of brought that here with me at UT, and Dr. Bliss has kind of like mentored me throughout that while still getting me well-versed and exposing me to more contemporary repertoire and more just different variety of percussion repertoire. So it's been a mix, you know. I mean, you saw one of my projects was doing an abakwa, like condensing it into 3 drums, you know, playing clave on the right foot, playing the chekere on the other foot, and then singing along while you're playing. And so that was a super cool thing Dr. Bliss had shown me. It was actually heavily inspired. I was basically ripping off Dr. Mike McStacky and his video that he had posted at NIU. But he showed me that and I was, man, you know, like that's what I want to do. I want to basically be that person. And so he exposed me to those videos and he's like, yeah, I mean, if you want to do it, just do it. And we could work on it on your lessons. And so it's kind of like, oh, okay. Like I could just do what I really enjoy doing and then we could just work on it together. So that was pretty cool. So I just started getting started on that stuff. And then, I mean, even today, you know, like we just saw each other and I was finishing up. I was doing like a salsa recording and playing all the parts and I got to just go and edit it and all that stuff. So I'd say I'm very into like the Afro-Cuban music and styles and that culture. So that's kind of the route that I want to take in terms of, I wouldn't say branding myself, but that's just what I love learning about that stuff. Like on my free time, I enjoy reading like top books because it's just interesting to me, you know? I wouldn't be able to give you an exact reason of like why I'm so drawn to it. I've thought about this for a long, long time because it's just such a weird, not weird, but such a niche like aspect of percussion that not many people are taking part of. But I could just boil it down by saying like it's just so organic, but yet so complex and so nuanced with it being like, because it's organic. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I think it's that like complexity and nuance and just like culture, deep rooted culture is what drives me to all that stuff. And so I think that's sort of like where I'm branching off to within my journey of percussion now. And it's with the help of Dr. Bliss and obviously with the expertise of Dr. Smith that I would not be able to be this knowledgeable that I am right now in my studies. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And then aside from that, like I said, Dr. Bliss is getting me into some more contemporary reps. We're talking about like recital stuff. You know, this past semester I played Omar by Franco Donatoni. So it's just like, I'm getting a good selection of repertoire, but I still get to dive into that. And a super cool thing that I got to do this semester was for our music bibliography class, like our professor just said like, hey, whatever you're interested in, like that's what our research project is going to be. So I actually did it on Roomba and feminist implications of new Roomba dances. And so it's like, it's pretty cool. I mean, you could just figure out whatever you really like and then you just go all in and you just do it. And it's pretty sick in my opinion. So that's sort of like where I'm at with my expertise. And I don't know where it's going to take me. You know, this is barely my first semester. So I'm still trying to figure out like what I want to do post-grad, you know, what can I do with all this stuff? I mean, sure, you can give clinics and stuff like that, but I want to do something a little bit more valuable, but I just haven't found that yet. So, I mean, it's a journey. So we'll figure it out sooner or later.
Dude, you get it spot on. It's a journey. I mean, we've definitely been exposed to so much music. I guess out of all the schools that I was thinking about, you know, for grad school and a couple of the offers I had to accept for TAs, I decided, you know, to come to UT because it's like, you know, obviously we're known for doing like the left side of percussion in the field, for doing some things that's like, you know, sound exploration. You know, we're a very big contemporary percussion studio. And, you know, when I was in undergrad, I didn't do much of that. You know, it was very much like the potatoes, like the meat and potatoes of percussion, you know. I know what everyone really studies and what they know. And, you know, it's been great that we've been able to come here and, you know, be exposed to, as we had our Jeopardy game for percussion linear pedagogy. What was it, like 3 weeks ago now when we lost to the undergrads, which we should have won that.
Yeah, that was terrible. We're not going to get into that right now.
But like, you know, for those undergrads who've been exposed to like, you know, all this countless rep of contemporary music and we're just now getting into it, it's like, man, like we almost fell behind in a sense, but it's like it's a whole new world that we're, being exposed to and we're studying, which is like a journey in itself, but then also like our own side projects, which is kind of what you're talking about, like, kind of taking it back and what we study a little bit too, like in the Brandon book, in the class with Dr. Bliss, and, just you having time to kind of dive into that, which I think is super like valuable and super attractive, I think.
Oh yeah.
I have no doubt you're going to use that, when you post grad, if not like your second year, especially when you're like, looking for whatever else you want to do after, especially if like DMAs or if you want to go and teach or put together all these materials to, to make something, whatever, it's going to be very useful. So, yeah, man. So would you say that when you were at UTEP, that was like your first real exposure to like world music, Afro-Cuban music? Would you say that?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. When I was in high school, like, I was just, like I said, I was just that drumline dude. So,
Yeah.
all I knew was just like drum
Same.
and DCI 2016. And like, that's just what I would talk about. And then, so I came into college, I kind of had to like change a lot of things about my playing. And then Dr. Smith, and even in our lessons, he'd be like, all right, like, we're just going to learn how to like guitar improvisation and stuff like that. And then so, I mean, he'll like show you a little bit of this stuff, but he would always tell us like this was one of his biggest things. He's like, don't wait to be taught. And so like I took it upon myself, like, hey, I think this is really cool. Let me just, okay, well, he showed us one song. Let me check out this album. Who made this album? Oh, Los Muñequitos Matanzas. Who are these people? And then that sort of just like starts branching out, and you're just like, oh, okay. And then from there on, it's just like a snowball effect. Like you just keep diving into it, especially like if you're passionate about it, like you want to absorb as much information as you possibly can. And so like that's sort of just how I was. I mean, I wasn't as big on it as I am now. Like I wouldn't go out to the library and like check out books on Afro-Cuban music when I was in my undergrad. I was just like, I don't know if I was like a little bit too busy, but like I would still listen to all that stuff. And then like, I would try to memorize every single part that he ever showed us, to like Bembe, like all the Bata stuff, and like Wawako and all the different types of Roombas and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so this way, like if you're ever just with your homies, and this was like a cool thing about UTEP, like the culture that we had at UTEP, like sometimes it would just be a late night and we're just like, hey, you want to jam? Like, yeah, like, all right, bring out the timbales, or like bring out the other congas, like let's just play Wawako. And then like, we would just start jamming. And it's like, well, and we would kind of collaborate. Some of us would be like, I forgot that drum. Like, how does that drum go? And then what's this part? Or we would just like figure it out. And so that was a pretty cool thing. Like we would just all jam together and we would just have a good time, and we would just like listen, or we would like make group chats and we'd be like, dude, check this song out. Like the percussion break in the middle is baller. You know what I mean? And so that's when I really started diving into all of that ethnic thing. And then it wasn't just Afro-Cuban. Like, Dr. Smith is studied in Brazil. He wrote his whole dissertation on Brazilian jazz drum set. So we had some implications of that. We had the samba bateria. And it was pretty cool. Like one of the master students my last year, Dr. Smith was just like, hey, you want to lead it? And it's like, yeah, sure. And so like, sure enough, he had the epinique solos and all that stuff. He'd do all the calls. And so there was room to grow, and there was like opportunities that you could take up. You just had to be ready to do it and just like want to do it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's pretty much just my exposure to all that stuff. And then from there now, it never ended.
Dope, man. That's super awesome. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure your research and playing is going to blow up on this stuff, dude. So, and I'll be long gone by then. So it's all right. We'll see. Or hopefully in the area. See. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
But I guess, I mean, to kind of branch off what you were talking about earlier, like with your, like in your lessons here and what you're doing now, I guess maybe for someone who's, I guess, looking into taking your job, when you're done in these 2 years of being here, can you talk about just a little bit about, I guess, what your jobs and roles are like here at UT, what your responsibilities are like, time commitment, man, like that alone is like, we can write a book about that, I'm sure. Yeah. But, just talk about like what your TA-ship consists of, working with the Drumline and Pride, and how that may overlap with the percussion studio and with me, or whatever you want.
Yeah. So my main TA, I'm a band's TA. So the way, it's kind of weird, the way it works here, we have 4 band's TAs. 3 of them are graduate conductors. So they're getting their degree, their master's in conducting. And then I'm the kind of the odd one out. I'm getting my degree in master's of percussion and performance. But with that, we all deal with like everything band, everything athletic bands and concert ensembles. That's our responsibility. So in the fall semester, it's all athletics stuff. With that being said, it's like majority marching bands, volleyball, and basketball. So that's kind of like the broad perspective of what we do. But what I do specifically is I am in charge of the drum line and all of the percussion aspects for everything marching arts. So like when it comes to the marching bands, there are times where I have to arrange a show. We do have a new position. Eli, who had my old job, got promoted to drumline coordinator. So he does a lot of the arranging. And so he takes a huge load off my shoulders because I'm like, if I had to arrange and practice the amount that I have to practice and be in the amount of ensembles that I have to be in, like it would just be awful. So you do have to arrange, sometimes like right now, my winter project is, we have a bunch of J.W. Pepper stand tunes. Like we all know those drumline parts are awful. So my project is just like, get rid of those, rearrange them, and then we're done. We don't have to worry about that. But also like every Tuesday we have drumline sectionals. And so I'm in charge of running that stuff. So I got to make sure I have a rehearsal plan. I know exactly what we're going to do for the next rehearsal with the full band. This way they're prepared for all that stuff. And then when we're out in the field, I just stick with the drumline, make sure that 1, they look good in terms of drill. 2, they sound good in terms of music. And then that's pretty much it. I also have to deal with all the maintenance. So that's sort of a pain, but it's pretty cool. Like you take a little bit more, you have a little bit of pride when, you tune all 11 snares, you tune all 8 bass drums and all 5 quads, and you're just like, man, they sound pretty good. And so not to toot my own horn, it's rare because like, our time commitment is so big. Like we have so much stuff to do that like there's so many things I want to do with this drum line in terms of like just maintenance and stuff like that, but I just don't have the time because, like that's not the only thing I have to do. I have to play in percussion ensemble. I have to play in wind ensemble. Sometimes I have to play in orchestra and symphonic and concert. And so it's like, it's all these ensembles that take up, 2 hours of your day. And so there's like 2 hours that you could just be tuning or practicing. They're just gone. But it's all great. I mean, like my degree is percussion performance. If I wouldn't be performing this much, I'd kind of be getting scammed at this point. But yeah. So like, it's pretty cool. I mean, there are times where it's just like, man, I just want to practice. Like, I just want a full day to practice, but I have to pinch myself, like when it's a Saturday night in Neyland and it's a sold out stadium of 102,000 people and you hear a drumline book that you wrote and you hear the drumline that you tuned and they're doing so well. And just like, man, it really doesn't get any better than this. This is it, like I'm having the time about whether
awesome.
I think about it or not, like however much like sleep I got last night, that doesn't matter. Like I'm here right now experiencing this cool thing, like that. You have to pinch yourself sometimes because it's really easy to like dive into it. It's like, oh man, I got this to do. I have to do this. Now they're telling me to set up the chairs and stands, which is also like, that's just my job. Like I can't complain about it, but it's like, man, I need another rep. Like just let me practice, please. But it's like, all this stuff starts piling up. So you got to be on top of it. Like you got to plan out everything, you can't just like let it sit on the back burner. Cause like, man, stuff will pile up so quick, but it's pretty cool. It's a lot of stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that I have to take care of, but man, like this is the most I felt I've grown in a semester ever. Like I've been pushed to the limit in a great way. Like I couldn't slack off. Like there was just no way I would slack off because if the second I do, like the drum line starts sounding bad, the wind ensemble starts sounding bad, and it's just like my lessons start going down, and it just snowballs. You can't, like you just got to set your standard for yourself and just like go for that, whatever it takes. Sometimes we had some pretty late nights here. There are times where it's just like, I should get reps, but I just need sleep. Like I can't do this anymore. So yeah, it's kind of just like a little overview of like what I do. It's a lot, but I'm really fortunate for it.
Yeah, man, that dude, trust me, that's a lot in itself. And then it's like being a full-time student, like you also have classes on top of that. So, you got to pass your classes in grad school. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like if you don't get a B overall, it's like you got to repeat that course or you got to do something that's going to make up for the credit,
Yeah. Like you'll have 2 concerts. And then another thing that just fell onto my plate was like being in charge of all the gear moves. Yeah. And so like every concert, we perform in a different venue. So we got to take a truck, our marching band truck, and move all the gear. So it's like every single time that there's a concert with any percussion gear, I have to move it, which is cool because I get into like all the logistics of all that stuff. But it's like when I have a 10-page paper due, and it's like, okay, well, now I got to move timpani again. It's just one of those things. It's like, I just need the time, man, but you just don't have it. So you got to learn how to prep. And yeah, the classes was a big thing. Like, I will say I sacrificed a couple of my courseworks to make sure that my playing was up to par and all that stuff. But we're
You have
passing.
to.
We're passing, so we're good.
Yeah. We passed the semester, so we're good.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Dude, like, trust me, man, like, if I had $1 for every time we were here late together or here early together and doing what our jobs were that weren't, like, practicing, man, dude, like, we'd be balling right now in
we'd
grad
be
school.
rich.
Like,
Yeah.
like, we'd be rich, man. And for those who are listening, I mean, I don't think, probably shouldn't say this on the podcast, but, like, I don't think there are any other 2 grad TAs that are at the building as much as Freddie and myself. I mean, granted, there's a few that are there consistently, but like, man, dude, we're there 7 days a week, 14-hour days. Like, it's crazy. And, it's like, it's tough because, like, you don't get sleep sometimes, but it's like, you have those moments where you kind of just take a step back and it's like, wow, like, it doesn't get better than this, And I've also experienced that, like, in the studio with myself, and I also take a lot of pride, not to toot my own horn, but like, how all the concert drums sound for like every ensemble, I tune them up. I get all the concert bass drums sounding pretty okay. Like all the head changes, got to fine tune all the timpani, the list just goes on, and, fixing like a little rattle on vibraphone, like what the heck is that? And you got to spend like an hour just to figure out where it's coming from. Then like, you got to put some moleskin on it, and you do that stuff for pride, but then like with the end product, it's like, it makes it so worth it.
Oh yeah. And that just seemed about like, especially for me, like kind of where I came from, like, my high school was like pretty poor, I came from like, just where I came from, like percussion was not like a big thing. And it's like, man, I'm working my tail off, but like, I just, like you said, you just got to take a step back and realize like where you're at. Dude, I can't complain right now. Like, there's just nothing like it,
Yeah. And I think I was talking to you about this. I think at the end of the semester, I might have been you or like maybe Trick, or maybe not, because Trick wasn't here. It was, oh man, I mentioned Trick. Sorry, Trick, if you're reading or hearing this now, Trick. Yes, I mentioned you. For those who don't know, Trick is one of our pristine, one of our most, talented undergrad percussionists.
Beloved.
Yeah, exactly. He was on tour with the World Percussion Group towards this past month. He was out touring Spain and Portugal. So I got to give a shout out to Trick since I mentioned him. So don't say I don't do nothing for you, Trick. I am right now. All the love, dude. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah. I was thinking about where it's like, man, I remember being like in my undergrad where all I wanted to do was just to get to where I'm at right now at this very spot. I was like, I just want to go to grad school. I just want to do what I'm doing right now. And, I obviously hope to get paid to do it, which I am. But it's like, just to live in percussion and just to live in our world. And it's like, here I am. And so when days get tough, it's just like, man, like, I got to take a step back. It's like, I worked so hard just to get here. So it's like, let me appreciate everything that I'm doing and where I'm at, especially being from Texas. We're all over here in Tennessee now, and we all come from different parts and everyone has their own background, especially being from El Paso. Like, it's complete change of scenery compared to here. So you're spot on, dude. Especially with all the roles, like, it's a lot, but at the end of the day, it's something special to be here.
Yeah.
And especially at the big SEC schools, the Big Ten schools, they go through similar things as well. And you gotta learn how to drive a truck, you gotta learn how to drive a U-Haul, how to drive a Penske, you gotta learn how to load gear, you gotta learn how to do it properly without damaging things, Like, the list just goes on. It just goes on and on and on, We gotta figure out how to problem solve, and it's just some of the grown up things that, that's not on our contract when we sign to be a TA here.
Yeah.
But everyone goes through it.
I just feel it's like, it's all life skills, like when I have to move out, I can drive my own Penske, I can load it.
Yep.
Like, we're all good. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And so It's just like these things that are inconveniences now, it's just like, you just got to change your perspective. And it's like, it's all for the betterment of you as an individual. So it's pretty cool.
Exactly. Dope, man. Well, I guess kind of the last thing I have, because I know you got to bounce, you got to go teach a lesson here in a bit. Is I guess, can you talk a little bit of, I guess, just about how maybe some of your roles kind of overlap in the percussion studio, and but not just strictly like working with me, but I guess kind of like the mentorship as far as like being a master's student, how you kind of oversee some of the undergrads here, like at UT, and how much we actually work with them and how much we get to not only play with them, but we got to kind of lead them in rehearsals, how we teach them. And I guess can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, like primarily I'm a band GTA, like that's my position. But since I'm in the studio and I'm a performance major, some of those duties overlap. One of the things that I saw a lot this semester was coaching percussion ensemble. And so it's like, it was pretty cool because, within that ensemble, it was a quintet. And then 4 of those people were in the Pride. So like I see them every other day on the field, on the marching band field. And then I see them on those days where we don't rehearse for marching bands in the percussion ensemble rehearsals. And so it's pretty cool. Like it's sort of like a mentorship and collaboration, because you're not like our sole responsibility isn't just mentoring them. Like we're in the studio together, like we're just homies, it's like we're growing together. And so, sometimes we both had to like coach our own percussion ensembles that we were in. So I thought that was pretty cool because, it would just be a collaborative effort. I would usually lead the rehearsals and I would, run the chunks if I heard anything, but then I would just like take a step back and it's like, hey, what do you hear? Like, is there anything that you want to work on? And it's like, yeah, well, I'm hearing this, like, let's do that instead. It's like, all right, cool. Like sometimes, they'll say stuff that I just didn't even hear or didn't even think of. And it's just like, I'm not the only one teaching, like I'm learning from them. And it's just like, I'm big on the word collaboration because it's just like a cumulative effort. Like everybody's just working together for that same goal. And we're all just growing together, like if they hear something, they'll call me out on it. Like, hey, you're kind of slow on this figure. It's like, all right, cool. Like I'm slow on this figure. Like, let me fix it. I'm not gonna, I'm not that dude where it's like, no, I'm the grad student. I'm right. Like, no, like I'm going to mess up too. I'm not perfect. I'm bad also. So it's pretty cool, and then also like with the ensembles, like wind ensemble, a lot of people are in Pride again too. So it's just like that collaboration. It's sort of weird because there's like this difference on the field, you kind of have to be the teacher there and you have to sort of dictate a lot of stuff there. But then once we get into these ensembles, it's a completely different environment. And so it's just like, it's a lot more, again, collaborative. Like we're just working together. It's like, hey, those mallets don't sound really that good. Like, can you try some of mine? Or like, can I try some of yours? And we're just like working together and all that stuff. And then gear moves too, like shout out to Trick. Like Trick's better at loading trucks than I am. So I'm just like, hey, you do this. I'm going to watch and I'm going to figure out how I can do this more efficiently because I'm not that good at it. Like I don't have much experience. And so it's like, you got to realize like when you should step back and just like be a student again, like you're not always a TA, you're still learning. And like, you don't have to only learn from people above you or like professors with the title. Like, I've learned stuff like from the freshmen, they'll say something. It's like, oh dude, I didn't think about that. Like, let me try that out. And it works. And so it's pretty cool, like you just get to like, I feel like we're all in the same playing field when it comes to ensembles. Like nobody's above anybody, nobody's below anybody. Like we're all there. We're just trying to get good at playing drums and we just help each other out and we're just homies about it. And it's a great time. I love it. It's a great thing that we have going on. This culture that we've kind of fostered into our, I don't know, studio.
Yeah, man. I think it's spot on. Talking with some friends of mine, whose studios may not be really big on the collaboration where it's just, a lot of the professor kind of, leading almost every rehearsal, blah, 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 and doing things, which is all great too. But it's like, sometimes it's like, you just want to play together with your group. That's, I guess, not considered a rehearsal or sectional, but like in rehearsal time to where it's like, you're leading it per se most days, but it's like where you get feedback from the students that's under you, like the undergrads technically, but it's like, you get to feed off of their ideas, you get to feed off their musical abilities, their sound. It's like, how do you match sound in an ensemble? That's huge. Like everyone has their own interpretation of just like a legato stroke, and like how you match that sound per instrument, it's difficult. And I really like how we kind of just collaborate a lot in the studio. Everyone kind of sees what we're doing, and we try to be somewhat involved with each other's projects in a way, some shape or form, and whether it's playing or not, just how like you're involved with me on this project, it has nothing to do with us playing, but we're talking about all things percussion in life. So it's for sure like a really big thing about what we do here. It's collaboration. And I think you're so right, because I've never been to a Pride rehearsal per se, but I can only imagine hearing from like Dr. Stewart, Dr. Zasable, Dr. Lyon, how, I guess someone who's listening to this, how they do band here at Pride is insane. And like you guys function like on a really high level. So I can only imagine
I
like
just want
how
to
it's for it.
add in, this is not an ad by any means. Like that first rehearsal, that is the most efficient marching band rehearsal I've ever seen in my entire life. And they're all like that. And it's crazy.
Yep.
And it's like, well, you got to think about it. They got 415 kids on the field. And it's like, how do you get them all to, they figured out that like their system, this is not an ad. Like this is just my experience. Like I've done drum corps. I've seen efficient rehearsals.
Yep.
This is like, yeah, we're not going to get into that. That's going to open up another can of worms, but just know like they got it locked down. Like if you want to see an efficient marching band rehearsal, like come check out the Pride and like they will, it's wild. But
most definitely.
Back to the collaboration. Yeah. And it's like, it'll be like setups too. Like a lot of the undergrads will be like, what if we try this setup? It's like, oh, okay. Well, I like that better. And then like kind of what we were talking about, percussion lit, like all they know is like this vast range of repertoire. So like I didn't come from that. So I'll just always pick their brain. Like, hey, what do you want to play right now? Or like, what are you looking at right now? What are you listening to? And they'll just like go off into all these, like I was having a conversation with like Annika, Lydia, and Anna, and they were just all throwing these like this repertoire at me. It's like, dude, hold on, like I got to write this down. These are all good stuff, Yeah. And so it's just like, you're just trying to draw something from everybody,
Exactly. Like I've had a bunch of talks with some of the undergrads where it's like, man, like Chris, you're just really technically trained really well. Like I'm just trying to get your sound. How do I do that? And it's like, okay, cool. Like this is how we do it. This is how I've got here. Like this is what I practice every day, how to get good at this. And then, it's like, as you said, they're talking about all this rep and all this music that I've never even heard of when I get here. And it's like, holy cow, like pause. What is this? Like, what's the instrumentation on this? And it's like, oh, it's just like a multi-step, like I heard about like my freshman year. And I'm like, okay, well, I've never heard about it. So like, let's talk about it, just how we're picking like each other's brains about things, and that's like a huge part of what we do. And we all have our strengths in different areas here in the studio, some people in the studio are better at things than I am, and then vice versa, or like for you and I, we both have different skill sets. And it's like, before I leave, I definitely want to take as much as knowledge from you as I can, before I leave, and I'm pretty sure that's like how everyone does it in the studio. It's like, hey man, like if you got like 10 minutes tomorrow, I'd love to meet with you to talk about this piece and like, how should I set this up? We just have those conversations. Or what balance should I use? Like, you got 5 minutes? Can I play this section for you here? And it's like, yeah, man, go ahead. That's just pretty much our life.
It's great, man. Yeah, that's great. People don't know, but like we have a little table outside of like our percussion wing. And like we just all sit and we just like chop it up, we just start talking about stuff. It's like, hey man, do you have these mallets? Like I've been wanting to try them. So yeah, check it out. You can borrow them for a week. Let me know what you think. Like we're literally doing that right now. Like I'm borrowing mallets from Chris, and then they'll just be like, like, do you have this book? Like, do you have this music? It's like, no, but we have it in the database. Like, let's go check it out together. And we just all like fanboy over the music. Just like, oh wow, that's cool. It's like, dude, check this out. And we just like show it to everybody. Like, everybody's just down to learn and down to get good at drums. And it's like, it's great, man. I love it. It's super cool.
Yeah. And those who are listening, this is not an ad or a promotion to come to UT or apply to UT, but a lot of great things happening here, which those of you guys who don't know, a year ago, we were a school of music. And then towards the end of the year, we transitioned to a college of music. And then now we have a huge donor name that sponsors the College of Music, which is the Haslam family. So, but in particularly, Natalie L. Haslam, which she's the donor for the College of Music. So now it's called the Natalie L. Haslam College of Music. So with that, it's opening up way more funding, way more majors to study here, and then just a bunch of things in the College of Music. So if you want to check out UT, visit our website. I don't know what it's called, UT Music, I think, something like that.
Email Dr. Carol. We'll figure it out.
There it is. Dope. But yeah, man, for those who are watching too, again, this is Freddy. He's truly like the definition of a homie here for me at UT. So you guys should go check him out. I don't know your Instagram, but I'll probably put it like on the tags and all that so they can come follow you. And a future website coming soon.
Coming soon. I need a little bit more content and then we'll be good.
Dope. All right, man. Well, I know you got to bounce. Thanks again for coming with me on this episode. I'm going to have Freddy's episode out really soon, everyone listening. And I believe on the next episode, we're going to have Hannah Moore coming on. So it's going to be great. So dope. Thanks again, Freddy. Thanks so much, man.
Catch you later. Thanks again, Matt. This is great. You're doing a pretty cool thing here.